Hey everybody, I hope you're doing very well. This is Ryan at eScootNews, and today is New Toy Day. This is an EVOLV City e-scooter. Let's get into the unboxing. Alright, let's get right into this, shall we? Alright, right out of the bat here, in this top socket, I'm seeing that we've got a user's manual, a nice postcard from our friends at Team Urban Machina. Up next, a multi-tool so that we can work on or tighten screws from various parts of the e-scooter from time to time. By the way, you should be checking all of the screws on your e-scooter using a provided multi-tool from the manufacturer, maybe once every week or 2 weeks, just to make sure that your scooter is in tip-top shape when you're out to ride. Up next, we've got what looks to be a charger for this e-scooter. I noticed on this that the charge hour is 6 hours. Not too bad. First, let's talk about two things that came in this packaging that I really enjoy seeing. The first one is this sheet that helps you to set up the scooter when you start answering some fairly basic questions, but things that sometimes we often miss. And then some helpful tips about battery charging and any number of other things in here. It's great attention to detail. Okay, so I took off a little of the extra bubble wrap and things that this was encased in, and so now we're going to set it up. Okay, so now we've basically set up the e-scooter, but we have a few things left to do before we can take this out for a ride. First of all, we need to put a couple things in place here. The controls on the right side need to be locked into place. The bell here on the left and the left-hand brake assembly as well. We'll use the multi-tool in this process, and it will take just a minute. Okay, so first let's briefly talk about some things that I saw that I'm enjoying already. Okay, so first off, we have a very clear and easy to read display here. You can very quickly and easily change between the riding modes for different speeds and acceleration. You've got trip distance and voltage in your battery that's remaining. I'll only make one note about this real quick, and that is in the manual it says that if you hold the power button while the power is on, that you'll get the headlight to come on. That's not actually true.
Instead, you actually have to hold the mode button for 3 seconds for the headlight to come on. Okay, up next, tires with good tread. I already feel like this is going to be a good ride. This locking mechanism looks and feels very heavy duty, much better than a lot of other scooters that I've tested. Back here at the rear of the scooter, we've got a solid rear tire in comparison to the pneumatic front tire. And we also have a drum brake back here. This is great because this whole portion of the scooter is essentially super low maintenance. Anyway, let's talk for a quick second about the EVOLV scooters. These are very well-built scooters that have very clean designs. Not a lot of cables and crazy things hanging out everywhere to get snagged on stuff. And some very thoughtful appointments on each of the e-scooters in the EVOLV line.
The EVOLV City is a very beautiful e-scooter. This model features a 350 watt motor. It's paired with a 36 volt 10.4 amp hour LG battery. The front tire is pneumatic, typical for most e-scooters. The rear tire, however, is solid. Advertised range, 22 miles. Advertised top speed, 22 miles per hour. It sits on two 8.5-inch tires. This e-scooter features a max load of 265 pounds. For those thinking about comfort, don't worry. This has a front spring and a rear encapsulated spring suspension system.
So one of the big reasons why I personally was interested in checking out this scooter was that sometimes I see comments from people or emails that come in where people say, you know, I really like the e-scooter life, but I'm not really sure that I'm into the maintenance side of it, which makes the EVOLV City a really great contender for a scooter that someone like that would want to purchase. Why? The rear end has a solid rear tire, and it also has a drum brake. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with this, these are two very easy to maintain things.
I would like to point out, however, that although this does have a rear drum brake, it does not have a brake on the front wheel.
There's pros and cons to both of these, but on the positive side, with a solid tire, you can't get flats. So this is really great for the city area where you may be running over broken glass on occasion or just random debris in the streets, really. And the drum brake is very easy to maintain and take care of. It's quick to adjust, and it doesn't have some of the faults that a disc brake may have, where they may go out of the alignment with the brake pad a little bit, things like that. So in the EVOLV brand, the City line is towards the bottom of the product range, but it's an excellent e-scooter still. It comes in 3 different battery configurations. One is the 36 volt 10.4 amp hour sync battery. The second one is the same thing except made by LG. And lastly, there's a plus model that's coming very shortly that's a 48 volt 13 amp hour LG battery. Obviously with the larger battery, you're going to get more range, and with it being LG, the product quality is higher. The version that I've tested here is the 36 volt 10.4 amp hour LG battery. For the 3 models, for the sync battery, you're looking at $8.99 Canadian. For the LG version of the same battery, you're looking at $9.99 Canadian. And for the plus version with the much larger LG battery, you're looking at $11.99 Canadian. Now that we've talked about some of the key features of the EVOLV City, let's look into the test rides and see how the specs performed from advertised to actual.
I love being the one to put the first mile on an e-scooter.
As per usual in our testing, I rode this particular e-scooter over 100 miles, all across the island of Manhattan, a little bit into Brooklyn, and I made it a point to ride this on a series of different types of surfaces, smooth and rough, some gravel, and basically whatever else I could throw at it. For the most part, I was able to ride on flat and level ground, which is what my distance estimates coming up were based on. The EVOLV City was advertised on Urban Machina's website of having a distance between 16 and 22 miles. First I tested this in Mode 3. On this I got 16.9 miles. I thought for Mode 3 and for my weight at 185 that this was a really good range concerning the advertised specs. Next on Mode 2 I got 18 miles of range. And finally, on Mode 1, I came in at 20.7 miles of range. I felt like this was okay, but I was a little bit underwhelmed considering that this was advertised at up to 22 miles. The advertised top speed for this e-scooter was 22 miles an hour. In Mode 3, as you can see here, I was just about hitting 21. In Mode 2, which is the one that I like to ride in the most here in New York City, you'll see on the screen that I'm hitting 16 or 17 miles an hour. This was a great mode to ride in because I could easily keep up with traffic and also the other riders around me. In Mode 1, I was only getting a top speed of 12 miles an hour. This wasn't great for me considering that in this mode I didn't really have enough acceleration to keep up with any traffic, and I also didn't quite have enough speed to truly keep up with the riders that well either. For city riding, I would definitely recommend that you ride this e-scooter in Mode number 2. For charging times, it was advertised as 6 hours. In my experience, all my charges ended up averaging at 5 hours and 50 minutes.
Okay, so the e-scooter did pretty well concerning advertised stats to actual stats.
Now, as I show you some other portions of my ride, let's talk about some of the thoughts that I had about this scooter through the 100 miles that I rode it.
With all the riding that I did with the EVOLV City e-scooter, I figured that this terrible portion of street would be a great opportunity to talk about the solid rear tire. As you can see from this video, this is an awful piece of road. This e-scooter has a solid rear tire, which is great for those of you who are hoping for a ride that includes a lot less maintenance. Although it rides well for an e-scooter with a solid rear tire, I have to say, you can certainly feel every bump in the road in the back end of this e-scooter. The solid rear tire really does ride well, and it grips the street well too. Just be prepared to feel a few more things while you're riding.
Now, you may have noticed in some of the clips in the earlier part of this video that I was actually riding with the charging cap off on accident. You should be really mindful to make sure that that's closed so that no water or dust gets in there. The cap seems like it's in a little bit of an awkward place, but there's no issue with the fender or the tire touching it.
I'm not necessarily a very heavy rider at 185 pounds, but it was kind of interesting to me to see the battery get depleted a little more than I would expect it to going up inclines. I'm sure this has a lot to do with the fact that this has a single 350 watt motor, but it actually realistically rides like something that has more power than that.
So I was talking a little bit about how the battery, I thought, was suffering a little bit more than what I'd seen on some other scooters that I've ridden. Now, for reference here, I rode 2 different bridges on this that had inclines of, on average, about 3.5%. And I saw a bit more battery decline in that than I thought that I would get. And also a couple of slopes in a nearby park that were probably closer to 6 or 7%.
Okay, first let's start with the pros. This is not a maintenance-heavy e-scooter, and that's made possible with the rear drum brake and the solid tire.
Here's another quick thing that I found that I liked. In the multi-tool, you can pop this part open, and you'll see that you've actually got a socket set for the scooter as well.
I feel like this e-scooter has a very high quality construction. I like the quality of the metal and all the parts that connected each section of the scooter and the frame. When I was riding, I didn't feel any give in the frame. I felt like it was really solid. I like the nice low profile appointments for parts on this scooter, particularly the folding lever and also the mechanism that allows you to fold the handlebars. This e-scooter has a very clean design. There's no crazy cables that aren't well put together that can snag on things while you're riding. I feel like the weight of this e-scooter and the center of gravity are pretty good too. Some of the competitors do weigh less, but I don't feel like they're built as solidly as this e-scooter is.
One thing that I do really like about this is that this front shaft actually is slotted. It's not fully rounded around the outside, and you can see that there's kind of a flat surface here, and there's also one on the other side over here. This kind of will help you make sure that your handlebars will always be straight with the front wheel when it's time to put this together. Here's something interesting that we're not going to list as a pro or a con, just something that kind of threw me off a little bit. Watch what happens when I touch the brakes. You see this come on? On all the other QSS4 modules that I've tested on other scooters, this typically only comes on when there's an issue with the battery. For instance, like if you're trying to run in mode 3 and you have almost no charge left, when it's taxing the battery too much. On the EVOLV City, this happens when you're just touching the brakes in any mode. Just be aware of that.
So one thing that I didn't enjoy as much was that I felt that this was just slightly underpowered for New York City and the type of traveling that I do. I feel like here in New York City, with the traffic that's around and the other riders, that mode 1 is basically not really usable in order to feel safe. Sometimes you need the extra acceleration to match the speed of the traffic, or just that little oomph that you need to get through that next traffic light. With Mode 1 being a little bit unusable for me, Mode 2 was really fine. But riding from somewhere near Central Park down to the bottom of Manhattan to Battery Park and exploring around in some of those areas and come back, you would feel like that you should have enough battery to get back, but Mode 2 eats just a little bit much into the battery in my opinion. I felt like Mode 2 also ate into the battery a little bit extra when I was doing things like going up inclines. A lot of times I would notice this when I was riding through the hills in the park, or even just going across the bridges. The idea of having a single drum brake on this is fantastic for people that like less maintenance with their e-scooters. But I definitely did notice that there was a change in how quick that I could stop with this drum brake.
Okay, so I'm not going to list this as a pro or a con, but I really just want to say that as much as I like the solid back tire for all of the maintenance things that we've been talking about, I really miss having a pneumatic tire back there. You can feel the road a little bit more than you want to sometimes. And to be honest with you, it feels like on some surfaces that the solid tire grips a bit differently than the pneumatic tire. So for those of you that are in the city and are looking for a ride that really needs a lot less maintenance than usual or than other e-scooters, I think that this is a good choice. The solid rear tire makes for much less maintenance. You can roll over a few more things, although you still have to watch out a little bit because the front tire is pneumatic. I guess you probably could replace that with another solid tire in the front. The drum brake in the back is very, very easy to service and really requires very little service at all in comparison to disc brakes. Although I feel that this e-scooter is a little bit heavy for its weight class, I think it's still okay if you're thinking about buying this and you might have to walk up a couple of stairs every now and then or so, especially because of how it folds up. With the handlebars that fold and the stem that folds down and locks into place, it's very safe and easy to pick this thing up and carry it around. I've done it a lot actually. This is a solid, well-built machine, and I can see this standing up to a lot of use. It's a great city rider, and it certainly gets me up and down across Manhattan. Now, most of you know that it's very important to continually service your scooter, whether it be getting your tires checked up on to make sure there's no punctures, changing tubes, or simply just adjusting brakes or making sure that screws aren't loose. In order to help everyone out, I made sure to ask Urban Machina a little bit about their servicing program. They told me that they have a service center and a network of technicians across the United States and Canada to make sure that you can have your scooters serviced by someone who really knows these particular e-scooters inside and out. I want to say an extra special shout out to everyone at Urban Machina in Vancouver, British Columbia. They were so kind to send this over as a demo scooter so that I could check it out after receiving emails about the EVOLV brand from you guys. If you haven't checked out Urban Machina, take some time to head over to their website. I'll put it up here on the screen. And they carry a really impressive array of very well-built scooters, from the EVOLV series to Unagi, 1 Mile, and even Inoki. I know what you're thinking, a Canadian e-scooter dealer. What can I do? I don't live in Canada. Well, don't worry, they ship all over the world, so you're fine.
Want more content just like this? Subscribe to our channel and ring the bell for notifications.